We begin every show with a Mythbuster segment where we look at some of the foundation myths of the conservative education reform movement, ideas that are usually inaccurate, sometimes they're downright lies, but they're repeated so often and there are so many well-funded supporters who say them that they come off as if they're true. Now, we talked before about the persistent myth, and it is a myth, that our schools are failing. While every indication is that our schools are now better than they were 40 years ago, there are higher test scores, including for low-achieving minority groups who've actually closed the gap. More kids are in school, the graduation rates are higher. All those things look positive. But, the critics say, look at how bad we do on international tests. We're just abysmal, and we're being basically run over by the other countries, and pretty soon they're just going to walk all over us economically and politically and every other way. But the problem with that is that it's not true. It is true that on the international tests, we're never at the top. And I know we like our exceptionalism. We like to be at the top. We're not absolutely at the top, but we're very high. Now, if you look at the latest test that came out, it's a 2011 Trends in International Mathematics and Science study. You'll find that the U.S. is rated about 11th in math. Well, 11th, we'd rather be first, but 11th, that's not so bad, especially when you think that most of the countries that are rated higher than us are nations in Asia. And there's something else going on with the nations in Asia that we really have to take other things into consideration with. Asian American kids here in this country perform similarly to Asian kids in Asian countries. There's something having to do with the culture. We can't go into it in great depth, but there's a reason why there's so many Asian countries at the top. By the way they school and a cultural thing, it's not that their schools are superior. But let's forget about that for a moment. Now, there's recently been an analysis of the scores that have broken down the U.S. scores by state. As a matter of fact, just imagine that each state is a nation and being compared to other nations. And that makes sense. Our states are the same in population or greater or a little bit less than many of the countries in the world. And what they found there is that some of our states rank amongst the highest nations, if you wish, in the world. And some of them rank very low. When you average them together, we don't look so good. But look what happens when we kind of tease out some of the information. Massachusetts, about 7 million population, that's similar to a lot of countries, is the 5th in the world in math. The 5th below Korea, Singapore, Chinese Taipei, and Hong Kong, and it's dead even tied with Japan in math. Now, I could do the same thing with reading and with science, and it would be similar, but we're always told how bad we are in math. Massachusetts, terrific, but they're not the only one. If you go just below Japan and just above the Russian Federation, which is the next country in there, you get Vermont, Minnesota, New Hampshire, and New Jersey. And in the next few rankings, all amongst the top 9 countries, we've got to include Maine, Montana, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. Excuse me, those are 9 states within the top 7 countries. That's pretty good. But on the other side, let's look at some of the lowest ranked states. For instance, if you want number 19 is going to be the equivalent of Tennessee, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. Those 3 states are right between Italy and New Zealand, which are 18 and 19. You might be surprised that Italy and New Zealand would be that low. We always think all of the countries are better than us. Not so. Even our 11 average or our 11 total ranking is better than those. Washington, D.C. is 22nd. It's between Sweden and the Ukraine. Mississippi is 24th between Dubai and Norway, and bringing the bottom is Alabama, which is 26th, right between Armenia and Romania. So you can imagine what happens here. If you take our top scores and put them together with our bottom scores, we seem rather mediocre. If you look individually and see what's happening, you're going to find that some of our states are doing very well. So let's ask ourselves, what's the reason why the states have such a disparity in their achievement? Let's click down some things. Maybe the style of education in Massachusetts, say, is better than the style of education in Alabama. No, that doesn't make sense. If you go into classrooms in both of those states, you're going to find they're more or less using a similar curriculum, more or less using the same textbooks, and they're far more similar than Massachusetts is to, say, Korea. Okay, so maybe it has to do with the great teachers in Massachusetts. Maybe they're better teachers than anywhere else other than those other top flight countries. Again, that just doesn't make sense. There are great teachers and good teachers all over the country who are working their tails off to give their kids the best possible education. And if there are a few more one place or another, that's not significant. But what about teachers' unions? Maybe teachers' unions are bringing some states down? Well, sorry, Massachusetts is probably the strongest unionized teacher state in the country, and many of the lowest states have the weakest unions. That doesn't work either. For all the fact that conservatives complain about teachers' union, strong teachers' union often correlate with high achievement. Okay, maybe it has to do with the friendliness of a state to the conservative education reform agenda. You know, things like school choice and charters and vouchers. Well, thanks to our conservative friends at ALEC, our very conservative friends at ALEC, we know that doesn't work either, because they put together in 2012, they do it every year, a report card on American education. Massachusetts, which we said is the fifth in the world, got a B- on an A through F scale. New Hampshire, which is ranked just below Japan, got a C+ on their educational reform agenda. Oklahoma, very low ranked, got a B. Washington, D.C., ranked even lower than lower than Oklahoma, also got a B. So lower ranked states are higher on the education reform agenda. So where's the difference? Well, here's the indication that's most likely to show what caused the difference in the states, and that's the level of poverty. Let's look at this map. This map shows the highest and lowest scoring states on that 2011 test I've been discussing, and the highest scoring states are in blue, the middle states are in green, and the lowest scoring states are in orange. Now you'll notice that most of the lowest scoring states are in a band across the south, stretching southwest and as far west as Nevada and California. Now the high scoring states are mainly in the northern half of the country. Keep that map in mind. Here's another map. This map shows the percentage of students in each state who are on free or reduced lunch. Now this is an excellent proxy, it's the best we have for the level of poverty in various states. Dark green has the highest number of students getting free or reduced lunch. Middle green is a lower percentage, and light green has the fewest students on free or reduced lunch, which means it has the highest average income. It's pretty clear how closely the low international test scores and the poverty levels correlate. It's obvious. Let me put both of the maps up at the same time. You can see the correlation between poverty and low educational attainment is startling, though it shouldn't be surprising. Annie, you and I, who look at education all the time, and anybody who studies education knows that the closest correlation we have in education is between family income and student achievement.
Absolutely, Dave. And you know, I remember there was a superintendent here who I was having a discussion with one time, and she said basically if you took the kids from an underperforming school in a poor part of town and took kids from a high-performing school in a more wealthy part of town and swapped them, okay? So you have these teachers over here teaching these kids, the high performers in the low-performing school, and the underperformers going to the high-performing school, nothing would change. Well, basically this would become an underperforming school with the poor kids there, and this school would become a high-performing school with the wealthier kids there. And when she said that to me, I was kind of shocked at just how stark she laid that out. But I think the more that we find in the data that you have presented absolutely proves the point. And the problem right now is rather than a war on poverty in the United States, we have a war on the poor. We just had the recent news coming out about 1 million people about to have their food stamps dramatically reduced in the state of Arizona, millions more nationwide. Arizona has 27% of all of our children live in poverty. In Pima County, 29% of our kids live in poverty. That's how we're going to solve the education problem, is by addressing poverty.
And people who say we've got to fix our schools, well, yes, we do have to make our schools better, but it's not either the outside society or the schools. It can't be an either or, it's got to be both and. We've got to work on poverty and student achievement and better families and better nutrition and better health care on both ends and on all ends. It's absolutely essential. It's the only way we can make it work.
That's right.